Anderson?
Okay. That's your job to remind.
Sorry, I was.
Jennifer always used to remind me. Go ahead and call the roll.
Anderson? Brad Consbrook? Here. Larry Consbrook? Here. Huntley?
Yes.
Esch?
Here.
Rowan? Here. Hoffman? Here. Fong? Here. A quorum is present, Council President.
Thank you. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Need a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Second.
Anderson and Larry Consbrook. Call the vote, please.
Fong?
Yes.
Hoffman?
Yes.
Rowan?
Yes.
Esch?
Yes.
Huntley?
Yes.
Larry Consbrook?
Yes.
Brad Consbrook?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Public notice. An official notice of the work session was published in the Hastings Tribune on Friday, August 14th, 2026, pursuant to Nebraska Revised State Statute 8414-12. The public is advised that a copy of today's agenda, along with all reproducible written materials, is available for inspection, and a copy of the Nebraska Open Meetings Act is posted in the back. First thing on the agenda is citizens' comments. Anyone want to speak to us? I don't go by the sign-up sheet. I just let whoever wants to speak. I figure if you can race your way up here, so.
Thank you. As you discuss the city budget and decide where our communities...
Jody, would you cite your name and address for the record?
I'm never really nervous about public speaking, but this one might be a little harder tonight. Jody Stutzman, 709 North Briggs Avenue. As you discuss the city budget and decide where our community's resources should go, I think it's worth remembering that a community is more than roads, buildings, infrastructure, and services. A community is also the way we treat one another. I'm here tonight, although I admit I would much rather be outside running, but I care about Hastings, and I want it to be a place where people want to live, raise their families, participate, and get involved. That includes creating an environment where residents feel comfortable coming before their elected officials and expressing opinion without being personally attacked. I'm bringing this up because I have witnessed and personally experienced behavior in this room that concerns me. I have heard comments directed at city council members, city staff, and members of our community that go far beyond disagreement. Some have been vulgar, demeaning, and deeply disrespectful. I want to be clear, this behavior does not go unnoticed. People hear it, people see it, and it affects the atmosphere in this room. I don't expect everyone to agree with me, and I don't expect everyone to like what I say. That is democracy. Disagreement is healthy, but there is a difference between disagreeing with someone's ideas and attacking the person. If we want Hastings to be a community where people feel welcome to participate, we have to make sure people can speak without being ridiculed, intimidated, or personally attacked. So as you look at this budget and think about the future of Hastings, I hope we remember that we are not simply deciding how to spend money, we are also deciding what kind of community we want to build. I want to build a community where people feel welcome to participate, where disagreement doesn't become personal, and where we continue to treat one another with dignity and respect. I think that would make Hastings a better place for us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else like to speak about anything on the agenda? Okay, seeing no one, we'll move along. The first thing we have is a presentation from the League of Municipalities. Lynn Rex is the executive director, and she's going to be our guest speaker for a while, and then I think Lash is going to turn over. So Lynn, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you for coming, by the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here this evening. We really appreciate it. We appreciate Hastings' membership in the League of Nebraska Municipalities. We are an organization that was formed in the early 1900s. The main purpose was representing the interests of cities and villages before the Nebraska legislature. Since then, it's expanded to include technical assistance, calls into our attorneys, visiting with us about a number of things, as well as training seminars. And you have a handout in front of you here, and don't panic. I'm just not going to read all of it. I'm not going to read any of it. I'm just going to kind of give you some highlights so that you have an opportunity to ask me any questions that you might want to have. With that, if you look at what our mission statement is, and again, as I've said to several of you here, if you ever have trouble sleeping tonight, you can pick up this book and start reading. But our mission statement outlines our main priorities. And of course, the legislative priority is certainly first and foremost, but it's not the only thing we do. We spend a great deal of time working on technical assistance calls, a lot from this municipality and other municipalities all across the state of Nebraska. You may or may not know, we have 526 cities and villages in the state. Of those, there are 31 cities of the first class like Hastings. Every municipality is different. And I was talking a little bit with Tyler before we started, just in terms of, no city is the same. No one city is the same. So we're going to be looking at some important legislation coming forward that we know we'll be opposing, because it's going to be treating cities differently. And we want to make sure that what you have for whether it's Municipal Equalization Fund or some other opportunities remains for you. And that's always an issue. With that, if you turn to page 3, you're going to note just some of the bills that were enacted in the last session. There were 514 bills that carried over from the 2025 session into 2026. Another 500 and some bills introduced in 2026. Of those, we basically ended up with 167 bills that passed, but that's not the whole story. Another 171 of those were amended into the 167. And so that really gives you an idea of the number of bills of the Nebraska legislature, what they were dealing with at that time. About a third of all bills introduced have an impact on cities and villages across the state. And first and foremost, that matters because we're a Dillon's Rule state, which means that as a city of Hastings, just like all municipalities in this state, you only have those powers that the Nebraska legislature gives you, either expressly, implied, or necessary to effectuate corporate business. That's it. Some states, we always get some city administrators that come from a different state, and they'll say, but yeah, in this state, we just have to find a statute that says we can't. In Nebraska, you have to find a statute that says you can. And so that's why we put in a number of bills. We have a league legislative committee comprised of every representative of first-class city, second-class city, and village. And Hastings has got 2 individuals on that, and we're hoping to add more if you have an interest in doing that. We do a lot of our meetings by Zoom, if you're so interested. And we get requests for legislation from all across the state of Nebraska, from our members, from state senators, from the governor's office, and from others. We're going to be having a meeting coming up here in August. We'll have another one in concert with our league annual conference coming up in September. What's important about that is that some of those requests may seem pretty minor about, can a city of the first class also only have 3 members on the Planning Commission? We passed a bill the last couple of years to allow second-class cities and villages to not just have 5, 7, or 9, but they could also have 3. It's hard to get people interested in municipal government. That's a request that we'll be putting in. In the whole scheme of things, that's pretty minor. But we have to do that because, again, we're a Dillon's Rule state. But that said, we have big issues that we're going to be facing again and again and again. And Lash, and Christy and I, Lash is here this evening. Christy Abraham, who's our inside legal counsel, will be meeting with Senator Brad Von Gilleren, who's the current chair of the Revenue Committee. We've been meeting with Senator Mike Jacobson, who serves as vice chair of that committee. And you've heard from the governor, I'm sure, and others, that they want to have a harder cap than what you already have. Our position has been, you already have a pretty hard cap. The cap that passed by special session with LB 34 in 2024, and then was later amended in 2025. Oh my goodness, that has had some serious implications in terms of what you can and cannot do. And so we're really concerned about making sure that you have the authority to do the kinds of things that you need to do on the local level. And it really does matter in terms of what your property tax rate is, what it isn't, what your assessed valuation is. I know you're going to be working at your budget. I think it's great that you already have some assessed valuation numbers to work on. Officially, that becomes official August 20th, but you can start moving forward on your budget process. And then again, this is really one of the first years of looking at how the implementation of LB 647 happened. And we've got a whole group of individuals from across the state that work with us that are going to be working on that issue. So again, you can kind of page through some of the bills that we dealt with, of the 167 bills plus the 171 into those. And again, so many of those are league bills. They came through our legislative process. I will also tell you, and this is kind of an unfortunate thing, we spend most of our time opposing legislation that would take power away from municipalities. One of the bills that we have dealt with, and this directly, of course, impacts Hastings and other municipalities that rely on the Municipal Equalization Fund, is sweeping additional funds from the Municipal Equalization Fund. That was a fund that was established in 1996 when the legislature passed the lid on restricted funds, which is now, of course, the cap that took effect with LB 34, which is what you're under right now. But in addition to that, you may remember, and I think, Steve, you may remember too, back in the day, in terms of what happened at that time, they put in place the levy limits, which have not changed. And the levy limits for municipalities are 45 cents plus 5. That hasn't changed. But what's happened is more and more restrictions, more and more unfunded mandates, and the kinds of things that we're working on each and every day. Trying to get away from some authority, for example, in terms of the Tort Claims Act. There's a $1 million per claim per occurrence cap. Trial attorneys are forever trying to get rid of that. I'm sorry if I'm offending any attorneys in the room. But I think it's really important to understand the importance of that and what that means for your rates and everything else, because we're going to be the ones that are opposing that. And the one thing with the League of Nebraska Municipalities, you can be assured, we only have one client. That is you. It's municipalities. We don't represent any other group. We represent cities and villages in the state of Nebraska, and that's it. So we never have a conflict. You never have to worry about Lash getting up and saying one thing and then Chrissy or me getting up behind him in opposition saying something else. We speak with a unified voice, and that's a voice that comes through our legislative committees and through the League Executive Board. It's really important that you know that. We really encourage you to participate in our conferences and our programs. Before I do that, I did want to point out a couple of things. One of you're the beneficiary along with 269 other municipalities. If you turn to page 17, this is the list of cities and villages in the state, all 270 of them with local option sales tax. We've been involved in working with every one of those provisions to allow municipalities to have a local option sales tax. Good news for you, you still have capacity of an extra half cent. That was the last bill that passed to allow cities to go from 1.5% to 2%. Some municipalities don't have that because they're already at 2%. So if you have a burning issue, whether it's affordable housing, that seems to be all across the state, any other infrastructure issues in development, you have an opportunity here with voter approval to use that extra half cent. And if you're interested in doing that, we've worked from what was initially 4 cities in the state in 1978 with local option sales tax, Omaha, Lincoln, Bellevue, and North Platte, to now 270, including Hastings with this. And we have a whole process to help cities get those kinds of things enacted. So again, think about that as you're working through your budget in terms of certain kinds of things. Nobody likes taxes, but it's a rare day that a sales tax proposal fails. And why? Because people have a choice. They have a choice in terms of what they're going to buy, what they're going to do. And in addition, I think back in the day, there were other folks that were opposed to a sales tax on the local option because they thought, oh my gosh, someone's going to go to a different city. They're not going to show up in Hastings. They'll go to Kearney. They'll go to Grand Island. Well, every city, the first class, has a local option sales tax. Not every city's at 2%. But you really have the good fortune of having that extra half cent if you would choose to use that. In addition, just wanted to point out to you on page 19, the creative districts, congratulations, you have one. And because of that, you're going to be able to have, these are just some of the examples of the many, many bills we've worked on. But on page 19, because you have a creative district with passage of a bill that allows you now to basically have access to the CCCFF fund, the Civic Community Center and Financing Fund, the only cities with a creative district will be able to access those funds in 2027. So you're in a very small group of folks that are going to be able to do that. We're trying to expand creative districts. I think they've done great things all across the state. But again, beware of the fact that you should be already getting that application ready if you haven't. I think that's going to be a really important thing. In addition, although you don't have an LB 840 plan, if you look on page 20, this is the Local Economic Development Act. In 1990, the League passed what was, well, we put before the legislature, and then the citizens of Nebraska passed overwhelmingly a constitutional amendment to allow cities and villages to use local sources of revenue for economic or industrial projects and programs subject to a vote of the people. You note the list of cities that have an LB 840 plan. Many of this allows them to do certain things that you don't have the authority to do. Basically, an LB 840 plan, these local economic development plans, are an exception to a constitutional prohibition against lending the credit of the state. What does that mean? That means that Sydney, Nebraska, for example, they can decide they want to help a downtown business by basically in their entire downtown area putting in certain types of signage. And they can do that. Even though it benefits those businesses, it also benefits the entire community. They can also help subsidize daycare centers. That's one of the big issues you talk about. What does it take to get a lot of folks staying in your community and younger folks staying in your community? Daycare is really important. They're able to do that. You're not able to because you don't have an LB 840. But you have that extra half cent. At some point, these are just things for you to explore down the road. I know it's not for tonight, but something for you to explore because that's what some of your colleagues all across the state are looking at. What are the kinds of things that they need to do in their community that they can't do without a voter-approved local economic development program? And that really matters. Our conference programming, if you turn to page it looks like it's 24. It's hard for me to read here. 21, I'm sorry. 21, you're going to see the conference programs for the annual conference coming up in September, the midwinter conference that comes up in February, Lash's conference for the utilities section is in January, and then our accounting and finance conference, that comes up in June. And we appreciate Roger Nash and the leadership he's provided consistently. He's the chair of our Accounting and Finance Conference Committee. Just in terms of, first of all, right after the legislature ends, what have they done in the budget? What is the law? What are the new law changes? What are the kinds of things that you need to know? And also, just as a finance officer for the utility section, or whether it be some other provision for you, you need to be aware of all of that. And he really has provided a lot of leadership, and we really respect that, and he's very highly regarded by his colleagues across the state. So I hope that you take that into consideration. If you get a minute, take time to look at this annual conference. We've got some great things coming in here. Certainly we're having the National League of Cities and their key lead on affordable housing, the bill that passed, Road to the 21st Century Housing. Mike Flood's also going to be doing some work on this with us in terms of a presentation. So we've got some cybersecurity. These are put together by a whole group of individuals that have been taking into consideration the kinds of questions that we get at the legal office on a regular basis and things you need to know, and some of the mandates that are coming down federally of which you need to be aware. So just a thought to kind of look at that, and those conference programs are there. On page 36, I provided 2 pages for you here. I didn't want to provide all of it. I'm happy to provide all of it if you would like it, but the ones that I think matter most. So if you look on page 36, what you're going to see is the formula for the league dues. It's a bifurcated formula. Because you have assessed valuation and your valuations exceed $1.2 billion, you have a bifurcated formula. So if you look on page 36, that explains the formula itself. But on page 37, this has your dues, if you will, and how that's determined. And then at the bottom indicates what your dues would be for Hastings, for example, if you were not one of the high-growth cities. The good news for you is you fall in a category of a few cities here, maybe like 15 cities across the state that are high-growth cities. And again, that is because of the progressive nature that this community's had for many, many years, for decades, the things that you've done to build up your municipality over the years. And so you see what your dues will be. It's not proposed anymore in that fourth column. Your actual dues for the League of Nebraska Municipalities would be $56,688. However, I think what's important, I'm sorry, $55,094. But if you look down below, what this provides for you is if it wasn't on a bifurcated basis, it'd be over $103,000, which obviously is not what's happening here. And there's also a $5,000 cap. So again, congratulations for the great work that you've done. Lash and I had a little bit of time to drive around and see the great city that you have. It's a beautiful city, and you've done so many great things right and continue doing that, so we just appreciate that. And Lash is going to talk to you about the utility section for a little bit, but again, we have a number of programs that Hastings has benefited from over the years, but certainly, and just in terms of the things that you can do from networking with others, we really encourage you to come to the annual conference. And if you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to ask. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have before Lash comes up and tells you a little bit about the utilities section as our director.
Anyone have questions? I think we go ahead and yell them out. I mean, the one question I had, when you started your presentation, did you say that in Nebraska, the cities have to find a statute that say they can?
They can, yes.
Do something?
We're a Dillon's Rule state, which means that the only power that a municipality or a county and others have in the state of Nebraska are those powers that are expressly granted. It's called Dillon's Rule, and the Nebraska Supreme Court has repeatedly upheld this over the decades. And that means that municipalities only have the power that is expressly granted. In other words, you have the authority to have so many members on a planning commission, for example. It has to have the exact numbers there. Or implied, so you have general powers. There are a number of statutes in Chapter 16 that governs for cities of the first class. It'll have general powers provisions. So there are a number of things that fall within that would be implied powers. And then those that are absolutely necessary, not just convenient, to exercise your corporate powers. So in any event, that's why in Nebraska, you may find somebody that says to you, well, why don't you do, especially if they come from another state, and they'll say, why can't we do X or why can't we do Y? Well, because you don't have a statute that says so. In addition, especially I think the best example is Scottsbluff-Gehring. Scottsbluff is a city manager plan under Chapter 19, Article 6, whereas Gehring is just a city of the first class under Chapter 16 like you are. A city manager plan has different statutes. They have some different authority that the city of Gehring does not have. And so periodically somebody will say, well, what about this? Why can't we do this? Well, because you're not a city manager plan city. In the same token, there's some things that Gehring can do that Scottsbluff probably can't. So yes, it has to be expressly granted.
Means you brought up city manager, would you kind of hit the highlights, what the difference are?
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
I don't know if we have a fairly new council. I've been around this a while.
Sure.
So it might be interesting for them.
We have, in the state of Nebraska, we have 4 classes. We have 5 classes of municipalities by population: metropolitan, Omaha, primary, Lincoln. Cities of the first class, 31 cities which include Hastings. We have 117 cities of the second class. On paper, population, which would be from 800 to 5,000, varies a little bit because you can also retain second-class city status if you drop below that. And then we also have 176 villages, population on paper of 100 to 800, but a number have dropped below 100. So you have 5 classes of municipalities by population. You have 4 forms of government. The city manager plan, which we have 10 municipalities in the state, that's a voter-approved plan where the city manager is literally the CEO. The mayor is an ex officio position. And you may know in a city manager plan city, just like on a village board, in a city manager plan, let's say Chadron, Kearney, Ogallala, what happens is the council votes on who will be the mayor. It's not, you don't run for mayor. The council votes on who will be the mayor. But the city manager is the one that has a number of authorities that a city administrator does not necessarily have. A number of municipalities, however, in the state of Nebraska have professional management with a city administrator, and city councils like the city of Hastings and others have decided that they're going to give their city administrator by ordinance almost as much power as a city manager plan has under Chapter 19, Article 6. And of course we have a commission form of government. There's only one in the state. That's Nebraska City. A lot of cities in the state, including Omaha, used to be commission form, which means in Nebraska City, you run for the police commissioner, the public safety commissioner. And if you are that, then you are the mayor. You may run for Parks and Rec commissioner. So you have all of those different types of commissioners, but Nebraska City is the only one under Chapter 19, Article 4. And then we have the village form of government. It's also a class of city. But the village form of government, again, it's frankly somewhat like a city manager plan in the sense that you have 5 trustees that run. The 5 trustees decide who will be chair of that village board, and then everything follows from that. But of course the villages do not have the same complexity necessarily. They would not have the same complexity as the city of Hastings in terms of your operations. You are in our office we call you a full service city. You've got gas, you've got electric, you've got it all. I mean, you basically, whether you know it or not, there are a lot of cities that would be envy to have the kinds of authority that you have in this city and also the kinds of services that you're able to provide.
Lynn, just quickly, thanks for being here tonight. I really appreciate that. And I have been fortunate to attend several of the conferences that you've hosted over the years, and so grateful for that instruction. And I think it's really insightful information for city administrators, also elected council people, and mayors. And so I appreciate you pulling all of that information together for Nebraska cities. I think it's really, really important, and would certainly encourage others to attend going forward in the future.
Well, thank you so much for your comments. And again, you can learn so much from your colleagues, and you can share so much because you've done so many great things here. You can share so much with others too. But you don't have to reinvent the wheel, especially when you see some of these federal mandates coming down. You don't have to reinvent the wheel on having a 50-page ordinance. You can look at what somebody else has done to figure out how they need to comply with the new federal laws coming down that will be in effect in April 2027. So again, appreciate your kind words. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Really appreciate it.
I've got one question. So you mentioned city manager, city administrator. So as far as like a council in that situation, how is the agenda controlled as to what goes on the agenda, differing between a city manager, city administrator, or?
When a city manager plans city, certainly everything would go through the city manager. Certainly in those municipalities with a professional city administrator like you have in Hastings, Nebraska. I mean, I will tell you that your best practices include that you have an ordinance that outlines how do you get an item on the agenda and how do you get an item off the agenda. We've always said in terms of even the cities of the second class, in terms of determining how you get it on and how you get it off, save your municipal clerk, save your city administrator. So for example, Michael, you don't say, I want item X on. And so somebody scrambles and puts on item X, only to find out that, oh my goodness, Mark says, take it off. You go into Tyler, you go into the council president, you go to the mayor, you go to take it off. Well, the answer to that is you should have a procedural ordinance in place that indicates who can put an item on the agenda and who can take an item off the agenda. That really does matter. And of course, you can't change an agenda within 24 hours of a meeting unless you're having one out of town, which that's not going to happen, or if it's an emergency. So in any event, but I think it's really important to have those kinds of procedural practices in place.
So that would be like a full-fledged ordinance with like an ordinance number, correct? I mean, as you're saying, to be an ordinance.
Some of them have done it by resolution, some of them do it by ordinance, but they indicate here's how you get items on, here's how you get items off. But certainly, best practices, you want to run those items certainly by your city administrator. You want your clerk, you want your city administrator, your city attorney involved in those discussions. And I think one of the best practices that we have always recommended also includes what the city of Grand Island developed several years ago. And the person credited is Renee Edwards, who's the former city clerk there. And the issue is basically if somebody decides they're just going to get up and talk about anything. Well, in Grand Island, in Columbus, and in other municipalities, they don't have what you may reference as an open mic. So what they do is they have a form. You can fill out the form at the city hall anytime. You can fill it out that evening, but you're not going to talk that evening because you would not give reasonable advance publicized notice. The Open Meeting Act requires that you give reasonable advance publicized notice. So essentially what Columbus and these other municipalities have found out, Michael, is that by basically saying to someone that let's say a citizen wants to have something on the agenda, let's assume hypothetically it's junk cars. I don't think the city of Columbus has done enough on junk cars. What are you going to do about junk cars? I want to talk about that before the Columbus City Council. Somebody from Columbus or Grand Island or many of the other cities that follow this practice, they'll get back to you, the staff will, whether it's your city administrator or someone else will get back to you and say, okay, here's our ordinance. You probably didn't know we had an ordinance on junk cars. Here's our ordinance. Here's who implements all of this. Maybe you want to talk to this staff member. And if I say, I still want to have it on the city council agenda, eventually it will get on. It may not be the next meeting, but it will get on. But controlling your agenda is really important because, again, it's all about governance. That's what's happening. It's all about governance. And I know in some of our smaller communities, people think that perhaps it's about entertainment. It is not. As entertaining as city councils and village board meetings may be, it's really not about entertainment. It's all about governance, and it really matters. Appreciate the question. Thank you.
Would you like to highlight maybe the authority the council has, what the mayor has, the staff has?
Yes, like in Chapter 16, and we can certainly send to you some of the exact statutes if you want to take a look at those too. But for example, For example, like tonight, as council president, you're presiding. The mayor's not here, so you're presiding. And in terms of the council is, you've got branches of government here. So you have the executive branch and you have the legislative branch. As a council, you are the legislative branch. And so when we have sessions, which we've had recently, a number of them, we'll have more of them at the Midwinter Conference, especially with the newly elected officials training that we'll be doing. If you are a city council member or village board member, not your role to go out and say, oh, in the street department, we see that we've got 3 individuals that work for the street department, and why are they all sitting there? Why aren't they all working? And so as a city council member, you decide, I'm going to tell them what they need to be doing. Not your role. If you see that and you've got an issue, or a citizen brings that to your consideration, you want to go talk to your city administrator so that he or she can then move forward. In this case, he, obviously, can move forward on that and contact the right people. So you're the legislative branch. You're the policy-setting branch. The executive branch executes those policies. It's up to the mayor's office then to execute those policies, those ordinances, those resolutions, those motions passed by the city council. That is the primary distinction. And the place where you really don't want to end up, if you can at all avoid it, is the third branch of government, and that's the judicial branch of government, because that's when you get to spend a lot of money. You get to spend a lot of money with attorney's fees, whether either side of that question. And that depends in large part on whether or not you, as the policymaking and the legislative branch, are doing what you need to be doing in contrast to the executive branch. But the statute, Council President, does go through and outline, here's the mayor's responsibilities, but they're very broad. I mean, it's very broad. The council's responsibilities statutorily, very broad. You know, you've got the power to set any number of ordinances to deal with the general health, welfare, and safety of your community. And that is your job. That's part of it. I'm so sorry? Don't forget the budget. Yes, sir. That's where it happens. The most important action you will take as a city council, or certainly as a village board as well, the most important thing you're going to do is deal with your budget, because that is the blueprint for how this community is going to be, not just in the next year, in the next 5 years, 10 years. What you're dealing with right now in the city of Hastings is what your predecessors did 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ago. So that is the most important document. And the reason for that is because where you put your money is where you have your priorities. And so that's why it's critically important. There's no document in municipal government more important than your budget.
Anyone on this one? Any more questions for Lynn?
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the
Thank you, and I
opportunity.
guess we're
Really
ready for
appreciate
lunch.
it. Please come to the annual conference. Looking forward to seeing everybody, and thanks again for all the leadership provided from the city of Hastings, whether it's Roger Nash or the utilities section. Everybody has been so great, so we appreciate the opportunity to work with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Lash, you're next.
Thank you, Steve. And I won't take a lot of time, but I want to add a little color to what Lynn talked about. And when I first saw Mark's email inviting us to this Hastings City Council, my instant reaction was, yeah, I want to do that. And then within seconds, I got a call from Lynn Rex, and fortunately, we were 100% on the same page. And I guess, you know, as you can tell from my hair, I've worked for the league for a long time, and the only way you can speak on behalf of all municipalities is to listen to municipalities. And in today's world of email, that's increasingly difficult. And you know, seeing people face to face just doesn't happen as often as it used to. And I think this is a great opportunity, and I really appreciate the opportunity for Lynn to come out and tell you what we do. And this won't surprise Tyler, Derek, or Lee, but I'm going to take a little diversion here. And I think your question of Dillon's rule really highlights what the league does and why speaking as one voice for municipalities across the state is important. Two things have happened in Hastings in the last 50, well, it's more like 60 years at this point, that both involved Dillon's rule and involved a lot of legislation. And the first one was, well, I'm going to take, was when there was the natural gas explosion, and the city took over the natural gas system. And at the time, and Fremont took theirs over shortly thereafter for very similar similar reasons. The hotel fires, that's just something that the public wouldn't take on. Unfortunately, there weren't statutes in place at the time dealing with city ownership of natural gas. And for a number of decades, we worked closely with Lee Blocker, Marv Schultes, a number of mayors. Dave Wacker would throw his opinion in there on developing statutes dealing with regulation of natural gas. Because in a Dillon's Rule state, your guidance is the statute. It's not something you kind of you make up on your own and then hope it works out. So that was a big thing, because Hastings is a unique city in many ways, as Lee, Marv, Dave Wacker, a number of people have been telling me for years, and I'll get into that. And the second one was in the 80s, when Hastings first started growing to the north and did some annexations that ticked a lot of people off. The response, it wasn't directly a Dillon's Rule case, but the answer was the annexation rules have to come from the statutes. And there was a good decade of negotiations back and forth that the League was heavily involved with, and of course Hastings was involved because it was the Hastings event that triggered a lot of the attempted statutory changes. And that was solely a Dillon's Rule issue, and that those laws had to be drafted in a way that would work for the Hastings development and at the time. And interestingly, that later overlapped with the natural gas issue, and which I don't know that anybody anticipated that. And there was a whole nother set of statutes that the League and the City of Hastings was very, very active in drafting kind of how service is laid out for natural gas systems. And so, Hastings is a unique and important city in that the fact that they own all of the utilities and have done so at the public's bequest. This was, and so Hastings' voice is very important to the state, and I hope we never lose what Hastings has to offer. And Hastings is unique in that I'm not entirely sure, but I would submit the Hastings multi-point water system, groundwater water system, might be the biggest one in the nation set up in that capacity. So you bring interesting perspective to water issues, not always the same perspective as a Blair or someone like that, but with the League is how you kind of work these things out to kind of find a solution that works for the entire state. And it's not just legislation. I know Hastings, like the university comes to the League as a voice on cities, where the little things like the university sent some PhD engineering interns. They wanted Hastings and Grand Island to get them, so they worked with us. Just little things like that. We are the central voice that people look to see what cities do. But again, going back to my original statement, the only way to do that is to listen to what you've got going on. And so I do appreciate you listening to Lynn. And very quickly, we do 50, 60 training events a year. We're active on regulations with the state, and whatever NDEQ calls themselves now, NDWEE, or it's just they used to have a jar where if you said their title wrong, you had to put a quarter in the jar. I mean, I think I funded the state agency one year, and we do a conference for the utilities in January. Although we're not inviting Lee anymore, because for 7 straight years, Lee came and brought an ice storm with him. so you're not invited anymore, okay? Yeah, you didn't go, and guess what, Derek? Did we have an ice storm last year? We did not. So okay, cause and effect, I don't know. We'll figure this out. So, but yeah, so you didn't go last year, and there was no ice storm. Actually, it was quite pleasant. But so no, I'm just teasing. But the weather was quite pleasant.
Lee, do you want that all on the record?
Yeah. Let's. Can we scrub that? Can we scrub that from the record? That said, we do a lot of training, and Hastings is an important part of what we do. And I would certainly answer any questions as well. All right, thank you.
That was your presentation? You're not going to go through your book or anything?
Well, I think Lynn covered a lot of my book. We send out publications to the utilities. And I just picked a few random ones that dealing with how you properly do disconnects. We have articles we send out. One very obscure, cities have to, when they do disconnects, they have to send the envelope has parameters you have to follow. So we have an article on that. Those are the sort of things we're communicating to your staff, on a daily basis. And and that's what your dues go to. It's what your utility section dues go to, and that's what we try. And we try to stay on top of what's important. I just randomly picked some newsletters, and we hit the envelope one, drought management ordinances, which is, I bet we got 75 calls for some drought management ordinance just this year alone in western Nebraska. People from Chadron understand that. It's been a tough year. So those are the sort of things we do, and and I would encourage everybody to come to our meetings, meet your counterparts from Blair and Papillion and Scottsbluff, and just talk about what your cities do, and continue to be a part of the voice of all cities in Nebraska. Nebraska's a great place. I love it, and I grew up north of here. This wasn't but I had a lot of relatives south central Nebraska, and Hastings was always the spot we would come, meet everybody. They're from Red Cloud and Blue Hill and all those places. Innervale, the places that nobody remembers down Holstein, all those wonderful little villages. But and interestingly on that, it's another thing the league had worked on, because not everything is for big cities. It's getting harder and harder in a Holstein or a Juniata to find people to fill the elected or even committee positions. Burnout is so high, and there's so few people in those places that we've been working with the legislature for a couple of years to kind of reduce their requirements. And this may flood over into your size city pretty quickly as well. That a planning commission, a village planning commission, can have 3 people. Those sort of hard to fill positions. It's just getting harder and harder in a village to find someone who's willing to do it and can do it and is interested. It's tough to serve on a village board. So those are the type of things we do for you, and I hope we can find better ways every day to communicate those things to city councils, and not just yours, every city council and village board across the state. So, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you, Lash. Thank you, Lynn, for coming out. I'm glad you accepted our invitation, and Mark, I'm glad you extended that after I recommended it. Being there's nothing else from the league, we'll move on to a presentation from the chamber. Shannon, you have a tough act to follow there.
Oh, they're wonderful. They do a lot of good work, and a lot of times too, NEDA and Chamber are working in partnership with the league, so we also appreciate their work. We actually are going to go in a different order. Our slides.
You need to do your name and all that for the record.
Okay. So Shannon Landauer, I'm at HEDC and Chamber, and address is 6011 West 13th. As Sydney is distributing a couple materials, we actually have a presentation that is respective of both organizations. We do put a little more emphasis on the HEDC program of work, and really it is with focus on knowing it's budget season and that requests will come up at our next public meeting. So what you have in front of you is the annual report from HEDC that went out about the end of Q1. So that is looking back at data from the 2025 year. You also have a similar piece from the chamber that points out some of our highlights and features. So to start stepping through our key areas of focus at the HEDC organization really are around business retention expansion. Then we get into site development that is needed for business attraction and even expansion projects. We talk about workforce development. We also then focus on legislative advocacy and business partnerships. We'll start here with talking about our business retention and expansion and then target industry sites. As we've talked in the past, we really feel like it is important to work within our existing industries to look for growth opportunities, look for retention opportunities, and also to do some supply chain mapping and understand how the clustering, the supply chain can really create a greater opportunity for recruitment for us. As we're out talking to industry, we really are looking at that ROI and what can be provided locally. So as of now, the two main properties that we are featuring are the two sites that you'll see, the Hastings Municipal site that sits just to the south of the coal plant. 50 acres, we have rail bordering, a great utility served site. Lagoons are just there to the west on Coltrane if you're not familiar. And then the Morrison property that sits on Highway 6. It is bordered on the north side as well as on the west by the two rail pieces, and then Highway 6 runs adjacent along the south. Why these two sites are important is that they're controlled. They are city owned, and we have Morrison property optioned so that we have timelines on infrastructure development that might be needed. We have some of the due diligence done already in terms of phase 1 environmentals and other research, but also we have the price controlled. When HEDC options a property, we have a document that says we have a lid on what that price will be. The property owner can negotiate down, but when we have an interested party and call the owner, they don't have the opportunity to double the price because they see an opportunity. And that's hugely important when we're marketing these parcels. We do have 2 additional option agreements in play. One being on the Showboat property, and again, we're in that Highway 6 vicinity. So just wanted to touch base really quickly on kind of what we're seeing in the industry with site evaluation and what we're seeing in terms of site locations, what areas are seeing growth. I think this chart's really important. We put this in from our friends at JLL just to show that, as e-commerce exploded, especially through that COVID timeframe, there was such a desire for leasing and purchasing in that warehouse and distribution space. That is an area that we've offered the Eaton building for, obviously not quite an ideal fit for that. But we are seeing in 2025, we are starting to see some of that manufacturing coming back in terms of lease demand and the companies that are out searching for growth space. That leads into, again, our Eaton building we just wanted to put up there. If you haven't been through or taken a look, they have done interior and exterior painting, they've done new LED lighting, repaired the floors, and tried to make that a little bit more marketable. There is going to be a roof that's needed, but it really is a good asset. So we are out promoting that quite a bit as well. I have some statistics a little bit later that talk about who's been looking and how we're getting people to take a look at the building. But we wanted to get into some of what we are seeing as kind of those big ticket things that are happening. In Nebraska and nationally, data is a headline maker. Data centers are being talked about from more traditional data storage, like the Google centers that have been in Nebraska for a decade, to what we're seeing in the AI spaces. So data, aerospace and defense is big, and then also, again, back to the traditional manufacturing type of facilities as we're seeing automation and robotics and investments being made for manufacturing. So this was our traditional look at aerospace. We have a couple companies that are currently a part of that supply chain with defense, with aerospace. One of the stories, again, we'll get to a little bit later. So it was very coastal, but now here's what we're looking at. I'm not a brilliant design artist. This is an AI map that one of our consultants put together, but he's really trying to show the astronomical investments that are being made from education in the new aerospace and defense fields to some of the R&D happening in the universities to where we're seeing component manufacturing facilities locating. So a part of the job at HEDC, again, when we go back to existing industry, is to understand what our companies are doing and look at how they could be beneficiaries of that supply chain process, even if they aren't necessarily government contractors like you would normally see within Department of Defense. So again, that's space and defense. Couple items to note. So we've talked a little bit when I've been here about Rakesh and the work he's done with NASA. We know that we have at Equity a company that also is doing some government contracting. So there's a whole lot of touch points in the space and defense area that we don't necessarily think of because that might not be their primary work, but an important part of this conversation. So this is a slide that I believe you guys have access to, but really I think it's a good piece to talk about how we create and think through the value proposition, but how we determine what are the good projects too for this community. So I'm going to talk a little bit about data, and I'll say it's theoretical, but it's really a study of what we've been doing and trying to understand data, because we hear a lot of conversations about land usage. We hear about our grid and our power capacity. We hear about water consumption. And those were some of the initial beasts of the conversation. But we've really seen things evolve. We've heard about noise. Well, there's differences in cooling systems. Again, when we talk about water, we've seen data projects that are using less water on a daily basis than McDonald's is. So not huge consumers of water. But we have to look at it a little bit different too when we do our analysis and look at what it can mean for the community long term. Oftentimes there needs to be infrastructure upgrades to our systems here in the community, and it's an opportunity to upgrade our infrastructure, whether it be local systems, statewide systems, or even on the national grid, that we're having private investment partnering with our public sector partners, not just putting that all onto a community, onto a utility. So we try to do a really good job of looking deeper at what some of these projects mean. Interestingly, when we see a lot of the manufacturing projects that are happening nationwide, we'll see projects that want upwards of 5,000 employees. So they're bringing property tax value, but there's a people element that rural communities cannot compete for. But when we look at data or some of these new modernized manufacturing facilities, we're seeing significant investment, so creating great property value without that huge headcount that some of the other projects need. So it's a good balance that offsets some of our more traditional facilities in the community. I don't have this slide in here, but at a recent event, we talked to about some of the wages, the engineering wages and professionals that are coming to communities with those types of projects. As we're talking with our existing industries, we talk about employment, the technology and utility infrastructure, not just today, but in 10 years, what they're looking at. We talk about legislative issues, their growth and supply chain. Community satisfaction and consumption also comes into play, but financial tools are hugely important. As we're seeing projects from small startups through industry, there's less capital coming to the table initially. So we're looking at pieces like PACE funding. Today we had a great conversation on community investment districts, really looking at opportunities to get projects funded that aren't on a taxpayer roll, but also are not just private equity, because in some cases that becomes quite a challenge. So what we do to try to bring in projects, Nebraska Department of Economic Development is still a great partner in bringing projects to market. We've seen several projects. A lot of that does still focus around ag, around value-added ag, further ag processing based on byproducts and fuel developments as well. We have had 2 community visits this summer, one of them Friday, one was back in June. I would say while they both were very opposite in some of the conversations, both were very tech heavy. They're very much focused on technology, and that's something that they see as being available here in Hastings. Huge thank you again to city teams, utility teams that were a part of those conversations, because that becomes the complement. We really take that for granted, but there are a lot of projects. My consultant friend that'll be up in just a couple minutes will tell you that in a lot of communities, if I would bring a project, we couldn't talk to a Derek, we couldn't talk to a mayor. And so when we can bring those conversations to the table together and consolidate in shortened timeframes, it really is an asset that sometimes we underestimate. We are going to Bio-Innovations Midwest again this year. Chad was out here in June for community visits. He's helping us with some of our target industry analysis. And then the bottom two, again, we're talking about logistics, we're talking about distribution, manufacturing, and really talent pipelines that need to be in place to make projects happen. The next, I just want to give a really quick update. So Hartwell Renewables did a really great, they had a great visit this summer to invite in the policymakers out of Lincoln and talk about what the incentives meant to them. They gave a great plant tour, but they really talked about how important it is to have state involvement in these types of projects, from bringing the project to market to helping to fund it with incentives. Our role as HEDC is nearly complete. We're just finalizing some of the assistance with the final incentive offering, but the intention that we heard that date is to be online and operational by the end of the year. So really exciting to see that progress. Existing industry, we did 12 formal visits. We do have 4 companies locally that are looking to expand the space that they're in. When we say 186 meetings, that includes everything from assisting with a legislative piece to assisting with an incentive program, a finance search, just really any kind of resource or assistance request that we have. And then we talk about the total number of businesses and employees that has grown from the 24 to 25 ESRI data. I shouldn't note that the bottom two, ESRI is backed up by Census Bureau data. Our revolving loan fund is another piece that makes Hastings unique in our partnership with the utility, with the city, and HEDC. We have 4 state-funded projects that are CDBG funds from the federal government, totaling $1.9 million. That will return $955,000 to the revolving loan fund. But currently, out of those funds that have come back, we have 7 loans for $580,000. The balance was $248,000 until this afternoon. We made another small business loan. So really excited to be bringing additional small businesses to market with that fund. Our BDO zone is Biofuel Development Opportunity Zone. So that's a national program. You get a ranking just like a report card. We are seeing that here in Hastings, we have a great site, looking at the Morrison site, and that using corn stover as a feedstock, we have tremendous opportunity for growth in our biofuel realm and sector. So we applied for USDA funding and we were successful. Those final documents are going to be signed Wednesday with our HEDC board, as well as a contract to help us get that into place. When we get our grade, it can be an A through a whole lot worse, which we expect will go very, very well. We will be put in front of biofuel companies across the nation to talk about what kind of assets we have, the site, the market, what kind of opportunities are out here. As of now, the only other is in Falls City, is the only other BDO zone rated area. Opportunity Zone is another important piece that we do on behalf of the city of Hastings. This is focused on census blocks and income levels. So anyone that will invest in the Opportunity Zone areas have federal tax credits they're eligible for. That one we've kind of talked about. Again, expansions we've talked about. Just a real quick overview of housing, because I think it really is important to get Chad up here. Just wanted to look quickly at, again, the housing projects, the values created. So the bottom line there, so far with the rural workforce housing funding and its revolved funds, we've added 603 units to the market. We've added $94 million in project investment, and our total value creation number is down there. Got a little ways to go on that, as some of them aren't quite done yet. And then out of that housing needs assessment that was delivered right at a year ago, the units needed over a 10-year time frame were about 900, so 90-ish per year. and we are at a good pace. We are meeting with a variety of developers, from those wanting to do a duplex or a triplex to those that are doing larger scale projects as well. I guess last note I'll put on that is, of the 10 projects that have loans out, we've created a fund of over $5.5 million that'll stay in Hastings to continuously be revolved. Some of the funds have gone out as larger sums that'll be a lump sum back in, largest being about $900,000, and another share of them are making monthly payments so we can continue funding smaller scale projects. North Park Commons is something I didn't start, but I have the pleasure of being involved in. It's a really neat project, and we do still often get calls and emails saying, hey, how did you do this, or how did that work out? But wanted to just kind of note again that 75 of our residential 90 lots are finished on the tax rolls. We have 11 that are still under construction or waiting for development. And we also note that the city was a strong partner in that project with helping us fund our infrastructure. We have made pretty significant progress, so remaining balance is about $48,900 to the city for our infrastructure investments. Just some really quick community data. I think it's important to note that median disposable and household incomes have gone up. Our population projections, again, that's based on Census Bureau data, and our housing unit numbers are shared there for you as well. Industry data, this one is just really quick, but we went down a level from manufacturing to get into what kind of manufacturing. So food manufacturing, machinery manufacturing, healthcare remains another huge sector, along with education in the community. It's important to note advocacy as well. Our candidate forums will be kicking off here soon. I think the mayor did a great job in having an event that really talked about property tax and where they come from and how we are using tax in our community. And so we think it's important too to bring information and opportunity for the city to bring a conversation to the community, but also to bring candidate information to the community through that process. So that'll be happening again in the fall. State level, we do go down and lobby when it comes to housing programming. We have really focused on some childcare pieces as well. And again, back to incentives. There's been some really good due diligence and research done. And honestly, a good share, I'm not going to say a percentage, but there's a good share of incentives given to industry projects like Heartwall Renewables that go unclaimed. So they most often come back after investments are made. But again, they're very conservative in comparison to other states. Finally, the DC trip, we have that coming up again in September. Last year we talked about the administration getting moving on some of the frozen funds in USDA that impacted local projects. We also talked about the airport funding. This year we have a group of 9 going. We're going to be talking again the aerospace and defense. National Institute of Health has a grant that Rakesh is involved in. We have a USDA meeting that we're working on, and we also are going to the U.S. Chamber. We'll get an update on that from them nationally, but also they have an event, ironically, while we're there in the building that day that is all about aerospace. So we'll see a lot of industry executives that are going, so we have a couple local reps for that too. Workforce is huge. HAMA's doing some great work. We hosted the Manufacturing Extension Partnership out of UNL last week at the meeting. Manufacturing Pathways was a part of Night of Excellence this spring at the Hastings Middle School. And we continue to do business tours and try to bridge the gap between education, the community, both young and old, and our business community. We're hearing that numbers are low at the college level, at the high school level, so that's not a today problem trying to fill positions. It's a 10-year pipeline problem. So we're really working at HAMA on how we're engaging the younger individuals. Manufacturing Month, we're planning a lot of tours, a lot of events, a lot of awareness about opportunity within that space throughout the community. And of course, just really being a good liaison when positions are open, whether it be hosting business leaders or bringing information on the community to new teachers as they're coming back to school or new college students, making sure that they can live their best Hastings experience and do the best they can. Okay, that was a really quick run through on HEDC. I will say that when we first reached out, Mr. Huntley didn't inform us we had other partners tonight. So I'm trying to get through a whole lot, but it was hard to scale back. So the first slide we want to put up at the chamber piece is our taxable sales. We see that there is a bit of a decline, and we've done some research with Department of Revenue to look at what areas are maybe underperforming by sector and where we've seen some growth. So interestingly, the areas where we've seen growth in actual sales, ag, forestry, fishing, hunting, the information sector, public administration, and other services, which I guess is up to Jesse to guess what that means. But we've also seen an increase in count of those that are collecting sales tax here, and that includes our retail trade space, professional, scientific, and technical services, and then the arts, entertainment, and recreation spaces. So while sales tax is down, in the conversation with Kurt, he said that some of this can be related to COVID fatigue. We're looking at the state numbers as well. I think it is important to note, though, as we put data out, we put up what is most available, but the state will come back and do corrections. That's based on audits, end of year filings, different things like that. So we put out the preliminary. There could be correction. That's not just us changing it, but it's all on the Department of Revenue website for review. Why it's important to talk about chamber and development together is that while HEDC really does focus on data and recruitment and prime industry and bringing new opportunity to market, the chamber is the partner in that conversation that really is bringing about the pieces that make the community shine bright. It's really what is helping with the retention efforts of people, of business. By focusing on networking for our member businesses, we focus on events that are going to engage our community, and we also focus on the advocacy piece. So we have started the Grow podcast, or Made to Grow podcast, really trying to educate on what is happening throughout the community with our industries, with our people, with our events and programs. The Shop Local Shine Bright promotion, we started over the Christmas holiday, but also put that into play for back to school shopping to really encourage taking a look at our community first, not just shopping out of town. It's an interesting discussion when it comes to sales tax. You know, we as a community need our sales tax collections to stabilize, to increase. So our message really is shop local first. Take a look at what you can buy here first before we just exit the market. We also have Chamber Magazine coming up this year. It's a 2-year publication that talks about the things that are going on in the community. We've got some great imagery that's involved with that, and also kind of a membership directory. And then finally, just wanted to talk about a couple of the promotions that we're working on. We do have some retail consultant work that we have underway again. Honestly, when we have national brands that are looking at our market, they want 281 frontage. They want the traffic counts. And when you really think about some of that corridor, we are a little bit short on frontage lots and opportunities. So working with some of our landowners, again, to talk about what might be available, how we can otherwise educate and bring projects to market. It's really interesting, and I think Chad would attest to this. We feel like we just have to get them here. We show so much bigger, and we're complemented with our community and what's happening in our community, but it's a matter of getting them into town and showing the community and the people and the assets that we have to offer. So I did mention the candidate forum, the manufacturing month. We were excited to be chosen as the community to host the 2027 Nebraska Economic Development Association Conference. That'll be happening in April. So be on the lookout. We really want to do it a little differently. Typically you go to a city, you're in a conference center. We want our community to be our conference center. We plan to use a lot of our venues, business tours, lots of things that people call to say, how did you do this? We want to make sure we're putting people in there to show it off. And we continue to host events and opportunities to provide resource to our community, from bringing in State Treasurer Joey Spellerberg to different consultants, elected officials, and of course the meeting again today that was on some new programming through the legislature. So again, with respect to your time, I'll just wrap it by saying we feel like we had a great year. There's always challenges, there's always things to do, but we're seeing growth of industry, growth in retail. Last year's numbers were 10 new retail establishments collecting, so that's progress. We also had a record year with our chamber dollars that were sold at over $160,000 to be put back in the community. So we appreciate the individuals that buy them for a birthday card and the companies that do them for a holiday incentive. It all matters, so we're excited with that. So after that, like I said, I wanted to really get through this because Chad is one of those site consultants. We talk about them often, that they're the people that bring the projects, and he's a partner of ours. I've known him for years. We have worked on ag projects, food projects, most recently a foreign direct investment manufacturing project we're trying to attract to market. So we thought it'd be good to bring him out here, let him look at the community, and then come back and bring a little bit of feedback, talk a little bit about the areas where he is seeing growth that's kind of surprising for rural in Nebraska. So with that, Chad, if you want to jump in, that'd be great. I feel like I should have a timer. I promise I try to go quick.
Thank you. I'm going to go fast.
didn't
Don't
make
you
any
worry.
promises on time, Shannon.
I'm from Mississippi, so y'all going to have to decode the southern accent as I
Chad,
talk.
I'm going to have you cite your name and
Oh, Chad
address
Chancellor,
and all.
Panama City Beach, Florida. But I grew up in Mississippi. I didn't tell you a lie to start out, I promise. Let's see, we got some slides somewhere? Oh, okay, all right, there we go. My mother's got double pneumonia in Mississippi, so I've been sleeping on a cot for the last 2 weeks in the hospital. She's doing better, so thank God I'm here. I'm happier than any of y'all to be here. I thought I'd be in the hospital in Mississippi tonight, but if I go to hurting up here, y'all just gonna have to deal with me. I want to start, though, with talking about why economic development matters, because I really never understood this. That's my father. He worked at a sunbeam plant in Mississippi. He was one of 10. And overnight, the plant got shut down. All the jobs went to China and Mexico when I was 10 or 11 years old. My daddy, his twin brother, 4 of them all lost their jobs just like that. And in addition to ruining our town, it hurt everybody's pride because they were literally replaced by people in Mexico making a dime, instead of $5 or $6 an hour. So I always thought economic development mattered because of jobs. That's my niece. She's a school teacher, and she sent me this article that ran in a Louisiana newspaper. A paper mill shut down, and because of it, it cost the school district $1 million a year. One industry shutting down. And my niece sent it to me. She said, Uncle Chad, it's the first time I ever understood what you do. She said, every time I get behind them log trucks going to school, she's always running late. She's a Christian girl, but she goes to cuss at them because they're in her way. She can't get to school on time. She said, I'm upset. I didn't know they were paying my salary. That's what my niece told me, and it educated me because all I've ever cared about was jobs. But the reason this matters, especially for those of you who may be new council members, is the tax revenue that comes in. And as you're looking at projects, one of the things you really got to think about is the tax revenue you're going to get in, because what you want to do is bring in more revenue to help your current citizens than just making everybody pay for the same thing. So we started our company in 2014. We try to help small to mid-sized companies located in small to mid-sized communities. That's what we do because of my background. And much to our shock, I thought we'd have a bunch of clients from Mississippi and Alabama. We've had clients from Anchorage, Alaska, to Hastings, Nebraska, to Kennebec, Maine. So one of the things we can tell you is how everybody does stuff. If you say we want a convention center, I'm going to Columbus Wednesday, they want a convention center. Well, I can probably show you how to do that. Not that I'm very smart, I've just seen how other folks do it. So if there's things that you really want to get done, we can give you perspective of how other people do it. These are some of the companies we represent. This is a company that manufactures roofing membranes. This was all being done in China till COVID hit. This is one of the things that has come back. We're now manufacturing here. We did a deal for them over in Tennessee. So as we're looking out there, we can tell you what sites folks are offering, what incentives folks are offering, the infrastructure. Infrastructure is a huge problem. in our country. I came over here and toured the week of College World Series. I went to Mississippi State. The only sport we play is baseball worth anything. We lose at everything else. So I always come to the College World Series. And I had been in Montgomery, Alabama the week before in a little town that had no water. If you fly to Montgomery, you go over lake after lake after lake when you're coming down. They ain't got no water. I asked Shannon, how y'all doing on water? She said, we got plenty. So I was surprised. But you just need to know not everybody has it. So you need to embrace it if you do. So I want to get into a few things that we did. We ran some stats on y'all that I want to show you that surprised me. These are 5-year projections into 2031. This is something called Esri that does it. They're a bunch of economists. We pay them for their data. If you look there, you're going to grow by 75 in population, but 113 households. Reason is people having less kids now. It's a nationwide. Elon Musk claims he's worried sick over it. Nationwide, people are having less kids. So even though your population's somewhat steady or flat, you're going to add 113 households. So just think of that in terms of housing, apartments, infrastructure, whatnot you're going to need. But the real interesting thing, look at that middle section. I'd point at it, but we got 2 different televisions. I feel like I'm at the sports bar, which I'm going to be at in about 15 minutes. Rivals, I like it. Look at there. Your households in the low income is going to go down by 4%. That's good. That means you win it. Your households in the upper income is going to go up by 4%. So you are really in a unique position where you don't have to just, we go to some towns and they just need to take any industry, any business that comes along. Y'all are in a unique position. You can really figure out what you want and go get it. You don't just have to have anything that comes along. That's very interesting stats we don't see in a lot of places. Your average household income is supposed to go up from $92,000 to $105,000 in the next 5 years. If that truly happens, now this is no different than saying I think Walmart stock's going to be $500 a share. These are projections. But if that happens, you're going to have commercial retailers that want to come in if you got locations for them. So these are all things that you want to think about as that household income grows. But you should be very excited with the people moving from low income to middle income. And see, even the middle income's going up about 100 and then up into upper income. So something's good's going on here. And it even held in the county. We ran the county figures and they held as well. If you see in the county, their upper income's going up 4%. And the lower income's going down 4%. Those aren't people just up and moving. They're getting jobs that are moving them into median income. I'm sure some are moving, but by and large, they're getting jobs that are moving them into middle income. These were some of the things that we found interesting when we ran your industrial numbers. So we were able to look at how many employees you had in various categories, how much they paid. The LQ's location quotient. So that first one's plastic pipe fitting manufactured. Its LQ is 46. That means you got 46 times the national average of what you'd be expected, you know. So one of the first things we look at when we're putting an industry somewhere is, do these people have enough labor for certain things? So you're really growing in pipe manufacturing, refrigeration manufacturing. Look at those construction jobs, highway, street, and bridge construction. They paying them $88,000. So whatever road construction projects are going on here is, my daddy worked on bridges after he got fired at the blanket factory, that's dear to my heart. And then even rail manufacturing, plumbing and HVAC manufacturers, paperboard manufacturers. And I asked Shannon when this popped up, non-alcoholic bar. I ain't smart enough to know what that is. Every bar I ever been in had alcohol in it. I lived in New Orleans for a while. That's a coffee house. That's what that is. So your coffee houses are going up. And you got a lot of different job markets that are going up. So one of the things that we do is kind of giving our thoughts to Shannon as to what you can go after based on the sites you have, the water you have, the sewer you have, and so forth. I want to talk a little bit about current trends in site selection, then I'm going to be quiet and let y'all ask me any questions you might have. Right now, all the site selectors got surveyed 2 or 3 months ago, and they said the number one issue right now is utility capacity, and it is. You got these data centers taking hundreds of megawatts in some places. You got them using tons of water. And so right now, water's a problem in a lot of places, wastewater's a problem in a lot of places, and electric power is a problem in a lot of places. And I don't mean Nebraska, I'm talking about nationwide. So anytime you get a chance, sounds like y'all are in good shape infrastructure-wise. You can't possibly invest enough in it. It's a huge, huge problem. But that right now is the number one impact facing site selection. Here you'll see they said 76% said it was the top factor. If you would have asked site selectors 5 years ago, the top factor was labor. Everybody said we can't get enough labor. Well, now you got all these companies that are laying folks out. Go to McDonald's, you put your order in yourself. I worked at McDonald's in high school to make a little money. There was 30 of us in there. There's about 5 in there now. It's no different with the industry. So what they're doing, they're having less headcount for more investment. Also, you'll see here, NIMBYism is a growing concern. That is not in my backyard. There is an anti-development mentality out there, whether you're on the far right or the far left, either one, it don't matter which political persuasion. There's just folks out there that are against development. And in some cases, they may have every right to be. I'm not saying they don't. But there's people against development. And that's one of the things that's really hard now. We won't even consider a site that's not zoned properly, because I don't want my clients to go through the whole public zoning process. I don't care if it's the cleanest industry in the world, we ain't doing it. So it's just something you need to be aware of. These data centers are such a big deal. A city council member in Indianapolis got shot because they voted to rezone some property to allow a data center to come. So somehow or another, my Facebook decided that I was interested in the data center debate, so now it just brings me ad after ad. If I put it up right now, you would see all around. So you'll see here, take action now against the data centers. Here's the one about the Indianapolis City Council member that got shot. These are all Facebook groups against the data centers. 3 or 4 years ago, everybody wanted a data center. Now, does everybody need a data center? That's up for you to decide. If you don't have enough water, probably not. If you don't have enough power, probably not. There's one being built in Monroe, Louisiana. I don't know if any of y'all ever been down there. Monroe is as rural as you can get. It's between Shreveport and Jackson, Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta, where the river is. Nothing but farmland. Meta's building a data center, and the school board in the first quarter of this year got $17 million more than last year, just off the data center. Now, this data center is not going to employ but 50 or 60 people, but that's how much property tax they got to pay. $17 million. The police jury, which down there is the county commission, everything Louisiana's backwards, so you got to just know what that is. Richland Parish is getting $11.5 million in quarter one. I ain't talking about the whole year, I'm talking about 1 quarter of the year. The city of West Monroe, $980,000 in quarter one. The city of Monroe, $700,000. The school board in Morehouse, which is a little old bitty school system, $380,000 in 1 quarter. So I was in a town in Georgia, I won't say where. We did a whole town hall where the citizens came in and had, their gripes about what they wanted to see the town do, and it was, we got to pave the roads. And they did need to pave them. It was terrible. We got to pay the roads. We got to pay the roads. We ain't got no money. Got to pay the road. We ain't got no money. They had turned down 4 data centers. And I asked them, I said, your biggest data center, how much revenue would that have been compared to your current revenue payers? 4 times their biggest payer, the data center would have been. Well, that's how you pave the roads. But these tech companies are doing a terrible job of explaining themselves. Elon Musk is out here saying AI is going to take over the world and kill us all and take all our jobs. There's no wonder the public's against it. But as council members, you really need to know when these projects are looking, what is the tax revenue you going to get, the schools are going to get, and others before you just up and say no. I mean, they will literally be brand new schools built, new buses, new teachers hired, extra pay, and so forth from this project. It's not just the data centers. I lived in New Orleans for a while, and in St. Bernard, Louisiana, which is the New Orleans east side where Hurricane Katrina literally came. If you can imagine Hurricane Katrina. In other words, the worst place that got devastated. The Port of New Orleans is wanting to put in a $1 billion with a B port. The Port of New Orleans now, not the Port of China, not the Port of Russia. The Port of New Orleans, Louisiana, and the town's against it. $1 billion, the money that it would create. And this is where Hurricane Katrina knocked all the houses down. So it's not just the data center. Everybody thinks people are against the data centers. People are just against development. They don't want it in their backyard. And you just need to know that. I'm not telling you to be for it, but you need to know it when projects come and look about. Even housing, we're seeing housing everywhere. Folks against housing, we don't want apartments, we don't want this, we don't want that. And so we see it all the time. So I know I got through that quickly, but I told y'all my back's nearly killing me up here. But I'm happy to answer any questions, and Shannon, make sure I go over anything you might want me to go over.
I do appreciate, actually, my father-in-law was in town this weekend, and he's in from Cheyenne, Wyoming, and talk about data center epic creation that's happening up there. He was kind of mad the data centers were moving in until he found out about $12 million was coming in property taxes for a city that literally pumps its water in from another state. So it's kind of amazing to see how much revenue is going to be coming into Cheyenne based on their energy diversification. And Microsoft's just won, contributing $12 million in property taxes this next year.
We have a YouTube show, and Shannon has it, she can give it to y'all. I interviewed the Economic Development Director in Cheyenne. They have landed 10 data centers. Meta, Amazon, Google, they're all there. And what she told me is a real interesting thing is that these companies are very charitable. They built parks, they built bridges, they built all this stuff, but they don't really tell it. They're terrible PR people when it comes to telling their own story. And I'm a manufacturing guy myself. That's my daddy's background. So I'm not running around. We don't represent any data centers. Not that I wouldn't, we just don't. We represent manufacturing companies. But you really got to look at that revenue and what it could do for your infrastructure to help your current folks, your hospitals. Some places I go, the community college, you get a tax off of it. The library, you get a tax off of it. And before you just throw your hands up and say no, you really got to look at it. Because a lot of communities are saying no. And the more that say no, it means if you want one, you probably get it. Because everybody's saying no. But you got to spend the money the way you want it spent. And that's to help the local folks, not just run out here and, smoke it out of a pipe or drink it out of a sack. What other questions might y'all have?
So what is our best prospect as to get a business? I mean, what's holding us back?
Shannon, what's the name of that building? The industrial? Yes, I toured that building when I was here for the College World Series. And although Mississippi State didn't make it, Ole Miss got beat, so that was fine. It's a very good building. I mean, I think you can certainly win in it. You got one problem. The owners are from out of town. Were they from Wisconsin, do I remember? Where are they from? Arizona? When you're dealing with out-of-town owners, they're just not as motivated. It's just something you're going to have to deal with. A lot of times they'll have real estate brokers not from the area. They may be far away. But in touring that building, the electrical's still in it. A lot of places we go, that's been ripped out. It's got good ceiling height. So as long as they're reasonable with their price and ready to deal with, I think that's your best bet that I can see right out of the bat.
So since we have plenty of housing, or we have lots of new housing, so we should get more property tax revenue from that. What business would you say outside of the Eaton building? What would we expect to see or hope to see?
I will go back to, if these projections are true and you do have this income growth, you should see some more retail, commercial, a little higher end. And I don't know what all's here now, I don't live here. But I mean, just naturally, if your income's going up, what's that, 15%? More than that. Then usually you will have more commercial retail and even, restaurants and all that would look, assuming you have, properties for them to develop on. The data centers will look, and they may already have. I don't know, I hadn't asked Shannon that. You will have data. If you don't have data centers looking, I'd be surprised because they're looking everywhere. With them, you have speculators that come along and want to tie up land you need to be careful of. You have developers that come along. So some of these data centers will have 3 or 4 entities in one building. Amazon may take a slice, Google may take a slice, Microsoft may take a slice. So you really want to know who you're dealing with. But if you get a chance to win one of the big ones, boy, they print money. And so if I had a site that had good access to water and power, I would look at one just for the revenue it could generate.
That's another thing we have a lot of. If I don't mention it, Derek will shut my lights off. We have a lot of power, we have a lot of electricity, and we have great rates, right, Derek?
Yeah.
There we are. So you should have us manufacturing data centers everyone should be knocking at the door.
The data centers, I mean, if the deals are structured right, and Shannon knows how to do those, I mean, you want to structure it so you all make money and the schools make money, and you don't want to just give them everything in the world. And you don't have to anymore because some towns are telling them no. And, you know, but if you put one, and that doesn't mean you don't give them anything, but you put a good deal together, you're going to make plenty of money off of it.
So what about current businesses? Do you do anything to help expand current businesses that already exist, or to bring in other businesses that may complement the businesses that we have now?
We don't at the local level, but, you know, I would say 80% of our site selection clients are U.S. companies that are expanding where they are. And as part of our analysis, you know, most of these companies will have 4 or 5 locations on the manufacturing side. They may be headquartered in Chicago or Detroit or whatever. And they'll have us literally analyze all 5. And, you know, they may tell us we want to expand one of these, but we don't know which one. And so sometimes you're competing within that own company where there are other locations, you know. So we do those, but no, we don't do it, you know, we don't do it at the local level in terms of, let's say, Hastings saying help our companies expand, but we help companies expand the facilities that they have.
My question kind of goes back to Shannon's slide on the decline of sales tax revenue. That's about a 4-year slide. It just every year is a little bit concerning. Does your research show what's lagging? I mean, I'll just throw out some examples: food, lodging, retail. What's causing the slide downward?
I do have that. Just give me a quick second. So the areas, I mentioned the areas where we saw a little bit of growth, and I did not put them away in order, so I apologize for that. Some of the areas of note that we are seeing decline in both the count and the tax collection would be in the construction space, the wholesale trade, real estate and rental leasing had just a little bit of a down amount. And this slide, keep in mind that the most recent data we get sector information is 24 and 25. So we don't have what that 26, that gold amount is. And then accommodation, food service was down just slightly by 1 establishment and a very small amount in total collection.
Shannon, isn't there a small data center already in the county?
There is.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure.
I can't say size, usage on utility or consumption of utility. I don't know that information, but we do have one already.
I believe it's pretty small. I think it's over by Prosser, if I remember right.
Correct.
Yeah, they'll range from 5 megawatt little bitty one to a gigawatt, you know, big ones. And on the sales tax, we do see this in a lot of places coming out of COVID because people just use Amazon and all so much more. So I don't know if y'all get a percentage of that, but I mean, everybody's just ordering stuff and it's showing up at, you know, some states, I don't know in Nebraska, the League of Municipalities folks might know, but some states have passed laws where you get a percentage of that Amazon, you know, cut.
One of the slides you had a projection for median income, upper income. In the section above that, it had low income, but in that next column, yeah, it has median income in the bottom, the average household income. But where did the low income tier, I mean, is that increasing?
The low income's decrease. If you look right above it, so if you see households in low income, then households in middle income, and households in upper income. You got 400 less households in low income 5 years from now. They're moving into median income, basically.
Okay, so how do you get to that conclusion?
This is something the U.S. Census Bureau, they analyze the tax return data we all send in every April 15th. So these numbers came out July the 1st, and they do 5-year projections. But they're economists. I'm not an economist. I just do what I do. So we pay them a good amount of money for it. But what was interesting, I did the county also, and it also holds for the county. The county, Adams County had 25% in low income right now, and they're projected 21%. So somehow those folks are moving up in income. My sense is the jobs that are here are paying more to keep good people. You know, it's hard to find labor now. And so my sense is, you know, when people have somebody they feel like is a good worker, they're paying them more than ever to keep them probably.
Our minimum wage also continues to go up, so that's
Yeah,
probably
that
a
could be pulling
contributing
that up, too.
factor. Yeah.
And, you know, those people live here, but they could be working in the county next door. So, I mean, it's not just you, it's wherever their jobs. But these are very good stats. I mean, that's what you want to do is pull everybody up. So if that holds, I would assume your commercial sales tax will go up starting now, but we'll have to wait and see.
Any other questions?
Yeah, yes. So when you looked at the numbers for Hastings, that put a certain thought and a certain kind of hope in your heart, let's just say. And then you look at the county and you say, nope, that really must be true. Is that what I understood you to insinuate?
No, they kind of follow each other.
That's what I'm
They're
saying.
pretty close. They're pretty close as far as following one another in terms of the way the moving average is going.
Right. My point is you feel real good about this information because not only does the city say it,
Oh, yes.
but the county does also.
Yeah, yeah.
And that is not always the case?
Oh, yeah, no, usually it's not the case. You rarely see a match up like that. And they don't match perfectly, but
Right.
they're both moving. So, yeah, that is kind of rare. But when you drive in here, the first time I came, again, was in June from Omaha. This feels like it feels twice as big as it is. I mean, I would have thought y'all were 45 or 50,000. I mean, what is it, 25,000, whatever it is? It
26.
just feels bigger from everything from the YMCA to the, it just feels bigger, you know, in terms of amenities. So I hadn't driven around a lot in the county other than just getting here from Omaha. But yeah, those numbers flow. Usually you'll see, usually you see the city either having more high-income people or low-income people. You rarely see it spread like that, city and county both. But, I mean, you're in a good position to where you don't just have to run out here and recruit anything that comes along, you know. Now, Shannon may not want to hear that because she's out here trying to recruit stuff. But, I mean, you know, you're in a position where you can really figure out what it is you want. Either you want some high-paying jobs or you want something that's going to generate a bunch of property tax or whatever and go out there and make it happen. We go to some places, they just need jobs. It don't matter what it is, you know, and y'all really are not in that position. Now, I'm sure there's some unemployed folks out there that would disagree. But just from a high-level standpoint, you're in a pretty good spot.
Any other questions? Matt?
Thank you. If you have questions, I'll be at Rivals here in just a minute. Just come up here and see me.
Well, thank you very much. Shannon, any closing comments or?
Thank you. We appreciate the time.
Okay, thank you. Looks like we could have a little budget discussion. Roger, Mark, who wants to talk?
I think I'm starting here tonight, so just a little follow-up from the first round of the budget discussion that we did about a month ago. So this first slide here is just a reminder of the revenue options. This is something that Roger and I had presented in the last presentation. So just keeping in mind, you know, how much property tax we got last year, sales tax we have some control over, and then mutual equalization and dividend, that those are our revenue sources. And then just that we are still facing that $3.6 million deficit in the general fund for this upcoming year. So changing gears a little bit, we wanted to talk a little about future tax request authority. There were some questions from council and the mayor at the meeting in July about what could we ask for, where are those numbers at? Roger was able to get some pretty close numbers from the county, so we were able to put together numbers to kind of answer those questions that came at the last meeting. So we have available between 1.1 and 1.2 million that we could collect if we raise the levy. To go to the top amount would be just over 40 cents. Currently, we're at 0.379 something. But another challenge that we have found as we have been analyzing the new laws that have gone into effect is that we actually really need to talk about, at a minimum, raising the levy up to just over 38 cents from where we currently sit. Otherwise, we will be losing authority in future years for what we could actually collect to help support the operations of the city. I'm going to pass this to Roger, I think, for just a second for these next couple of slides, because Roger put this together to kind of illustrate what I just mentioned on the last slide.
Good evening. That's quite a group to follow here, so we'll try to make this as riveting as possible. So I redid these slides several times trying to come up with the best way to show you what, and a great segue from Lynn on LB 34, the new requirement for property tax authority. And I'm hoping this spells it out pretty well. So prior year, which is the current fiscal year we're in, 2026, you can see our tax request was just under 8.7 million. And because we did lower the levy last year, we did have unused authority that we didn't request that we could have of 688,000. So that carries over into the fiscal 27 budget. Then based on the new information that we just received today from the county, about a 6% increase in valuation and about a 0.5% increase in growth. So to do the calculation for the amount of tax asking that we can increase from the prior year, we take the 0.5% growth and then the inflation factor provided by the state, which is 5.26%. So we can request an additional $503,000 this year over last year. So if you add our current year or prior year's tax asking, the amount that we carried over, and then the amount that we can ask for new from this year's calculation, gives us just under 9.9 million in property tax request authority. That doesn't mean we have to request that amount, but that's the maximum authority under LB 34 that we can request. And as Mark said, that would set the levy at the 40.6 cents to request the full amount of our authority. So I think it's also really important that we talk about what happens if we don't request that authority. So what the new law states is if you have carryover authority, you can only carry over 5% of your prior year's tax asking. So that second number, the 469,000, is a very important number because that's the only amount we can carry over to next year. So if we request anything less than 9.4 million, we're going to lose authority in future years, and then it's gone. Because next year you can only ask again for inflation plus growth over the prior year. So that levy of 38.7 cents is really, again, not the number we have to set the levy at, but if we set it at a number lower than that, we will lose authority going forward in future years, which is a detriment to the city because it's tax asking that we had available, and because we did not request it, it's lost. I think that number is probably as important or more important than what the cap is, that we don't want to lose any authority if possible. So just what we've always talked about last month, and then the mayor with his Mayor Thursdays with the Mayor Live he had, we talk about the current property tax for a $200,000 home. This is the number we had at his presentation, $63.18 a month is what the current property tax is for just city share of property taxes on a $200,000 home. You see, if we move that levy to the 40.6 cents to request the full authority that we have available to us, that per month cost to the homeowner goes to $67.73, which is a $4.55 increase
Per month, correct?
per month.
Per month.
So that,
Just for the city's portion of property taxes, to be clear.
so that
Thank you, Mark.
additional revenue created for the city would be about, well, $1,179,000. And reminder that the county keeps 1%. So the actual tax asking would be a little higher than that, but that's the amount we receive after the county keeps their 1%. And with the current deficit we're talking about of approximately $3.6 million, that increasing the levy to the maximum amount we can this year would reduce the deficit by about 33%. So really, that's all I had to try to explain the questions we had about the levy, what our options are there. Obviously, there's way more to discussing the budget other than what the levy is as far as expense and all that, but this hopefully explains where we're at with the levy and what our options are. And if you have any questions, I can certainly answer those. I just want to remind you that this is the third year in a row we've been talking about using cash to balance the budget. It's not really about this budget. We have a balanced budget. We're just using cash to balance the budget. It's more about future years. What are we going to do to try to correct this deficit? And we're not unique. I think every city in the state's probably facing the same issue, that with inflation, personnel costs, operating costs, the cost of capital, everything is increasing in cost a lot faster than what our revenue sources can keep up. So we're creating a larger gap every year. And what can we do to get that turned around and try to get back to not having to use such a substantial amount of cash? So again, can we balance this budget? Absolutely. But as we saw before, in a matter of 2 to 3 years, that might not be the case. So we have to really look at what's going to happen in the future. I can certainly answer any questions about the revenue side of things.
Roger, do these increases reflect what the valuation increase is going to do? Are these numbers based on a 6% increase in valuation?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's why I hope you can see why it was a hard question to ask or answer a month ago, because we didn't have the numbers to be able to plug in to tell you what it was, and we knew that there was this low end on it as well with the authority ask. So, yeah, we needed the valuation number, which we just, I think, officially got this morning. So.
And then so it kind of just compounds, because whatever our tax asking is this year, then next year, the amount you can ask for is, again, the state inflation factor that's provided and the growth locally is what we can ask for above this year. So as you continue to increase your base tax asking, it gives you the authority going forward to ask for additional property tax. The law also does allow for exceptions. The main one being for us would be public safety. If we were to need to have to raise the levy further, you could take some of your public safety as an exception. It's not really something I would recommend doing until we get into a position where we would have to, because it does have some ramifications down the road of how that's calculated going forward as well. This complies with the law just at the base level of how it's written, without taking any exceptions for any public safety or bonds or anything like that.
Any other questions? Okay.
Mark?
Yeah,
I
sorry.
do have, so basically, if we were to ask our tax-paying homes to pay, on an average, $48 a month, this is solving 1.17 million of our $3.5 million deficit to the city right now. So
Correct.
if I heard correctly from our advisement from other groups tonight, we have a half-cent sales tax that we're not occupying or using right now as a city. Is the city currently looking into those resources to help us match this or help us get us out of this hole? Because honestly, we are talking about also things with inflation, wage inflation. 80%, we know that our wages are there. The biggest thing, and I heard it from Roger tonight, our gap's getting bigger. So we have to have an answer. And it's not just the levy, it's a multifaceted issue that we're going to be facing, whether we're bringing in revenue, whether we're cutting costs, or finding other sources of tax entities that we can do. Is important. And is that something that the city has taken into consideration, or we should be considering into consideration, is that half-cent sales tax to help us out in this, because other cities are facing the same thing. So.
Right. Yeah, I think we have been looking at all of our sources of revenue. As you're aware, we brought forth discussions on a number of occasions about a restaurant tax. We talked about an increase in the dividend last year. We constantly, every year, talk about the levy and where we're going to go with the levy. So those are the things that we can kind of control. The half-cent sales tax gets a little bit slippery for the city because we can't promote that. It has to be approved by a vote of the people. But yes, we are having conversations with folks in regard to, is that something that we can put a committee together to look at that, whether it's tied to an LB 840, as was discussed tonight, or if some of that half-cent can be utilized for other things. But the people have to approve that, so that's certainly not a guarantee if we can move forward. But yes, it is all under consideration and discussions are ongoing.
So Brian, to follow up a little bit with that, the additional half-cent that was referenced earlier has some specific requirements on what it can be used for. So it would have an indirect benefit to the general fund eventually with bringing in more business from that perspective, but it wouldn't be a direct help because it's got a specific use for it. Right. The current half-cent sales tax that we have that we're currently using for parks improvements, street improvements, and the museum, that is a half-cent that when that comes up in another year, that can be used for anything. So a part of that could be designated to be used for the general fund operating. Now, it's never been that way in the past. It's always been specifically to use that half-cent for improvements and upgrades to things that we couldn't afford through the general fund. But that half-cent is available to use for whatever. The additional half-cent to get to 2 cents has some restrictions on it that would not be able to directly benefit this deficit.
Right. Thanks for that clarification, Roger. Any other questions about that? Yes.
What if we do nothing, we change nothing, we balance our budget with our cash, like is already happening. We don't add any taxes. We don't try to get an LB 840 or another half-cent. What does it look like for us realistically in 3-4 years when those cash reserves are gone?
That's a great question because then we won't have any cash to balance the budget. So then we will be having to make very hard decisions about what is need versus want in the city of Hastings.
But I think that's even a harder question to answer because we never know what the legislature's going to do.
That's correct. There's all of those external factors continue to hamper. You hear us talk about unfunded mandates all the time. That's where having the support of folks like the league is very important so that we're aware of what's coming and so we can go and advocate for or against things that are harmful or beneficial to our community.
So I'm assuming, making some assumptions here, but if we continue to head down this trajectory, we are going to have to cut people. We would have to
probably
cut
with
amenities,
the kind
cut
of
services.
deficits we're talking about, we would be cutting departments.
Thank you.
If you want an example, look at the city of Aurora. They do not have enough revenue and they are running a deficit and they do no longer have their EMT services in their community. They're having to figure out how to solve that problem. That's the road that we're headed down.
To
Any other questions?
piggyback on what Brian has mentioned, it looks like our emphasis right now is to generate additional income. I just hope that there is the same emphasis on the budget side to look what we don't need.
Absolutely. You know, as we did last year, we eliminated a number of positions. I've got a slide where we're going to talk about some of the things that we've done already this year. We are constantly looking at those things and working to try to run as efficiently as possible and keep things as in place as we can to support the departments that we have in our city. But yes, it's very much an important thing for all the department heads as we work through. Okay. Anything else on that?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Roger? Also, we have talked in the past about the fact that we're taking $2 million a year out of the Employee Health Insurance Fund. You're aware of what I'm talking about, correct, sir? How long until we run out of that extra revenue source, if we keep taking $2 million a year out?
So that was one of the slides we had in the presentation in July showing the reason our cash balance is going to end up at the end of this fiscal year better than we anticipated or budgeted for was because we did move about $900,000 of the self-insured health fund over to the general fund as a one-time thing, and we're going to do that for one more year in 27. But again, and then that will get that balance down to where we're comfortable with where that needs to be. But again, that's a one-time source. So you will see next year that 3.6 million will be reduced 900,000, say if we move that same amount over from self-insured health fund. But again, that is just a one-time cash infusion in there that is helping in the interim, but in no way is solving the issue. But to answer your question, one more year. Fiscal year 27 that we're budgeting for right now will be the last year we will move money from there to lower that fund balance.
And just a reminder, Roger, that is a recommendation for us to lower that rate because that cash balance is overinflated. Is that correct?
Well, it goes back to when the utilities in the city come together. They each had their own self-insured health fund. So when we put the two funds together, we ended up with an excessive balance in there that did not need to be there. They actually tell us to be in about the $3 to $4 million range in that fund. I'd rather be closer to 5, but we were in excess of 10 from putting the two funds together. So that's why we've worked to reduce that. It just happened to coincide with the same timing of facing budget deficits that has helped maintain our cash a little bit. But again, that's a short-term.
Not a long-term source of income. Correct.
Right.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
Thank you for the clarification on that.
Do you have a preliminary budget that can compare the numbers to last year? And what I'm getting at is what kind of budget increase are we possibly looking at?
I think there is an item in the front of the budget book.
If we're talking personnel costs is 3%. And I think without going back and looking at the slides, I think operating for the general fund was maybe around 1%, a little over 1%. And then you've got about $2 million in capital requests. So percentage-wise, the budget increase is not that much. It's basically the majority of the dollar amount would be in personnel costs, which is the same for every city as far as their general fund goes, because that's where all the expense is we provide services and it takes people to provide services.
But our overall is coming in under inflation, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think, which helps to illustrate that we are trying to keep our costs in line and keep expenses to what we really need, not our wants.
Mr. Funky, may I give you a stage to explain that a little more thoroughly, that some of that goes over my head, what you just said?
So the average cost increase based on inflation is presented by the state at 5.26%. Our total increase in budget, with 3% of it being personnel costs, which keeps us in line with comparability with other cities, and our operating of approximately 1%, without calculating the number I don't have off the top of my head, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 4%. So we are under the actual inflation increases that we're facing in a lot of our expenses. Does that help?
Just giving you stage, sir.
Appreciate the question.
Mark, will you print these and get them to us?
Yes, I can send them all to you. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, any other things on that? So you heard Roger mention that we have about $2 million in capital. So I think we presented this at the last meeting as well, but we thought we'd go into it at a little more depth. I know we've had some discussions about some particular line items, so the department heads are here, so if there's any questions about any of these specific, please don't hesitate to reach out. But what I really want to look at as we go through this list over the next 2 pages is there's some items that are grayed out up there that are obligated, that we don't have a choice to cut at this point. The example I'll use is the jet hangar. As you may remember, council voted last year to approve the jet hangar getting built. We're under contract. The construction is, if it hasn't started, we'll be starting soon on that. And the total came in at $775,000. Is that right, Jeff? And we had authority for this year for $375,000, so we are obligated to put in the budget for next year a capital expense of $400,000 for the jet hangar. Sticking with the airport, I guess, because that's probably our biggest spenders, is we have an apron project that's beginning soon, a runway lighting project that's beginning soon. Both of those are grant funded, but those grants also come with a match from the city. So if you look at those at the bottom there, apron project, Project Lightning, the grant is $4.9 million. And we have an obligation of about 10%, which is $470,000. So I know Matt Kerr is working on trying to find some additional, maybe state funding and other grants to lower that percentage. But right now, that's the best we know, is that we're going to have to cover about 10% of the cost of those projects. Questions about any of those items on page 1?
Yeah, I got a question
Yeah.
on that. The 15-foot mower, what
Yes.
is the 15-foot mower? Because a lot of people have asked me,
Yep.
where do you get a $147,000 mower? So I'm just going to ask the question.
Sure. Well, I think before I let Jeff go here is, you don't just go down to Menards and buy a 15-foot mower. I mean, so that's part of it. Is it's a little bit more of a specialty item, but I'll let Jeff get into why it's important.
So we have 520 acres that we maintain. This is a big bat wing, folds up. You've seen it drives from park to park. Covers a lot of acres. I want to say it's right around 300 acres it covers. Usually have retired individuals that run it. Our specific one that we have currently is a Toro model. We bought it in 2016. Back then we bought it for $93,000. Unfortunately, inflation, that's the cost today. It has, last I checked, it had like 6,400 operating hours on it. So it is aged very well. We definitely need it to be replaced.
Is this the kind of item that's put up for bid?
So there's really only 2 manufacturers of this size of mower. Usually what we do is we do the cooperative purchasing program where there's RFPs already done. We pick the model we want, and both manufacturers are within $1,000 of each other. We've had both of them. Toro has lasted longer for us, so we've been going with them lately, but we do compare prices.
And when you say that, I think you said RFP, that just means a way to purchase stuff for the city from a set price that is supposed to be an attractive price.
Yes, it's the same process as like a state bid, cooperative
You're
purchase.
just buying them through the state,
Correct, yeah,
off the state process.
yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Generally, because lots of different cities and departments are buying from that, you can get good pricing from the state because they're buying lots of equipment. Does that answer your questions about mower or anything else? Okay, yeah, anything else on these? One thing I do want to point out, the cemetery has phase 6 of the roads project. That's $605,000 is what we had budgeted. I think we got bids that came in about 550 some thousand.
537.
537, thank you. We are not obligated to spend that money. Right now, the mayor is not signed that contract because he wants to have the budget discussion about whether we do this work or not, since we have a deficit. We'll have to make a decision on it fairly quickly because I think middle of September is when the contract, the bids themselves are expired, correct?
Yeah, September 15th is our deadline.
So just something to keep in mind as we're discussing potential cuts and where we want to go. Certainly, when we're talking about phase 6 of a project, it's not something you necessarily want to stop, but we don't necessarily have the money to spend right now. So
The thing about phase 6, it's right at the front entrance.
Yep.
It's where all the Veterans Memorial.
Yep.
Memorial Day service, you know, I think we probably ought to just proceed with that.
That's certainly council's choice, but that's why I brought it up, because right now the mayor wants to make sure that we're discussing it before we commit those dollars.
You know, maybe the columbarium.
Yeah, and I don't know if, Jeff, if you can speak to the columbarium. I know it's,
Yeah, so the columbarium we have 2 of them. It's way on this one is way on the east side of the cemetery. The current columbarium is about 70% full. It's a popular option, and it has about an 8-month lead time. So by this time next year, we could be close to 85% full. So if you push it off longer, you basically just lose that option for the community if they want to choose to purchase a space in the columbarium.
does the purchasing of the spaces in there actually pay for the cost of the columbarium over time, or is it?
It does, yeah. So
Okay.
we price we set the fees based on the cost of the columbarium. So it's not costing the taxpayers any money. It's a service. If you choose to want to purchase it, you can.
Jeff, I know Hastings College just built this brand new dorm, so if we get a newer columbarium, could we charge more for the newer facility for that space, or is that something that you just?
We just evaluate how much it's going to cost us, and then we can if that's the direction.
They're all the same size, right? There's
Yes.
not one bigger than the other?
Nope,
Okay.
they're all the same size.
They're all the same size, and it's a money generator for the
Yeah.
city. Okay.
Well, it's probably money neutral in the
Yeah.
grand scheme because we front the money and then as it gets filled, we get reimbursed the cost of what we spent, so. Okay, any other questions on that page? Okay, so page 2 here is, so we have police, an unused, unmarked vehicle, a used unmarked vehicle, bulletproof vest, and then HVAC for the building. Again, none of those are necessarily committed, so are up for discussion. And then for fire, I think you had Chief Orderstrass presented a month and a half or so ago, and these are the items, and he has put those kind of in the order of importance for him. But again, none of those things are committed. The only thing we have committed for the fire department is the $309,000, almost $310,000 for the sinking fund, which we are pretty much obligated to do since we agreed to purchase a new fire truck. So we have to be able to put money away to cover those annual payments. And then also, if you may remember from Chief Orderstrass's presentation, they pay for other things out of that too as they move forward for equipment and various other things. So at grand total, we have about 2.4 million that is requested. You'll see at the bottom, I'm not going to necessarily get into the weeds of them, but we had another $1.3 million of things that we deferred and pushed forward that were items that have been planned for a while that we are not able to fund at this time. So I put that here to illustrate that we are making some of those decisions to not bring forward things that would increase that deficit even more. But jumping back to the middle of the page, you see we have about 1.3 million that is obligated or committed based on decisions that have already been made. And then we have about 1.1 million that is uncommitted, that is something that could be discussed if council doesn't wish to spend that money, as we talk about cutting expenses and decreasing the deficit. So questions about any of that?
That 15,000 for the vests, how many vests is that?
Chief, do you have an answer to that? How many vests? 10 bulletproof vests?
10? Okay.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but that you kind of have those on a rotation so that as things get worn out, you replace. Is that correct?
We have to buy them for new hires, and we have to replace them for every employee every 5 years. That is the union contract and also the federal standard.
Okay, so new employees, and then they have to replace them per federal contract every 5 years.
So that's essentially obligated. Yes.
Yes or no? I mean, we could buy more next year if we didn't buy some. Basically, it's a deferment, and if we don't get them this year, yeah. Okay, any other
Just be
questions?
clear, I wasn't questioning it for
Just-
our police officers.
Yes.
Because I have a son who's in law enforcement, and I think a vest is probably one of the most important things they have next to a radio for backup. So that's why I was asking the question. I was just curious how much the prices jump with inflation, and because my son has to purchase his own. So when I look at that number, I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's an excellent question. And no, I don't think we thought that you were saying not to get them. Just we want to explain how often, because it is an important thing.
Mark?
Yes.
Can you explain to me and the rest of the council, you put on the deferred projects list, parking lot, obviously, but could you explain the bands funds and the dam upgrades that is being deferred? Because obviously when you defer something, it's going to come up.
Well, okay, so the parking lot for the museum, we worked with the street department. They did some patching so that we could kind of try to push that down the road, but I guarantee if you talk to the director, Teresa, she wants that parking lot, because if you haven't been out there, it's getting pretty broken up. And another year of snow and freezing and scraping and all those kind of things is not going to make it better. But we felt it was something that we could try to patch a little bit this year and try to make it through a little longer. Band's fun, and I'll lean on Lee in case I screw this up, but the first project that's $250,000 is a basic maintenance practice. So it's working around the lake, like cleaning up silt and other things that are problems to get into the lake, as we've talked about with some of these water level issues. Doing some of this basic maintenance thing around the edges helps, in the waterways, and some of those things help to keep that silt from getting into the lake, so you could save those dollars down the road. But it's not something that we have to do right now, so we've deferred it at least for another year. And then the Lake Hastings Dam armoring is something that, and Lee, jump in here because I don't remember exactly where this is coming from, but I believe it was something the state was asking us to look into. Which is really protecting the dam from, the 500-year flood kind of thing, where we have just a lot of water and it starts to erode the dam, and then you could end up with a bigger issue impacting the rest of the city if something should happen with the dam to fail. So I don't know that we have a terrible problem right now, which is why I think we can defer it, but it's something that we need to think about in the future to make sure that we're securing the dam. Is that fair, Lee?
Aren't those two projects we need to work with the NRD on?
Yeah, and that's
NRDs,
part
I
of it
think, is two of
is trying to find other funding sources and working with the NRD and the feds and various other places, yes. And I don't want to speak for the NRD. I don't know if that's something that they do or not, but I would assume that we would have conversations with them.
Yeah, so the dam armoring project was brought about by the DNR's inspection of the dam. They noted on there that by modeling, they thought the 100-year and 500-year flood would overtop the dam. So we had JEO as part of our BRIC FEMA funding do that study, and their modeling also showed that. So we have a design to fix that problem, which is basically an auxiliary spillway to the south of the existing spillway, armor coating the backside of the dam with, for lack of a better term, concrete pavers that are all tied together with cables, so that if that overtopping would happen, it's controlled overtopping that will not wash away the dam. So this is something that the DNR is very excited that we got the design done. So they're happy we did that part of it. So we probably have a few years. We've told them we're looking for funding. We don't have the money to do it right now. So it's truly a deferral that, depending on how many years this goes to where we can't find funding, at some point they're going to knock on our door and say, hey, you guys need to kind of do this project. Along with that, our insurance company will not insure the dam for the city, so that's another aspect of that. So something that can be deferred, but again, to Brian's point there, it is something will need to be done.
Yep. Okay. All right, so then the last slide I have for you tonight is, as I mentioned earlier, I want to talk about some of the things that we've done to help try to keep some of our costs down. We have eliminated one full-time position in finance. Roger and his team did some reorganizational things to allow that to happen. Chief Ordestrass eliminated 4 part-time positions. And then the police were able to utilize some of the wireless funds from 911. So every call that gets made on a wireless service generates some funding for the police and the 911 center. And they were able to move around $140,000 to use for salaries and benefits that is not money that's coming directly out of general fund coffers. And it's saving us about the cost of 1.5 to 2 positions, depending upon the positions, through police and fire. And then, Chief, there was something else you mentioned to me the other day that we were saving.
The transfer of the retirement.
Oh, right. We did. Yeah, we did have Roger and Chief Story and some of his staff have been working with, I don't remember which organization, but we had an old pension plan that the final officer has come off of, and they were able to close that out to the tune of about $750,000. That, again, one of those one-time benefits that's coming to help our cash was an influx into cash that Roger was able to utilize, but helps defer how far down the road before we run out of cash if we don't solve some of our other problems. So, other than that, I don't have anything else unless you have questions. The department heads are here if you have any specific questions for them. They're prepared to answer those as well.
I do want to say the mayor's hot dog / meeting with the department heads, I was there, and they were open and available with their books open and available to everything, to pencils, supplies, you name it. The public had an opportunity to come and ask them questions. And I think from my understanding from a lot of the department heads, this is the first time it's ever been done. And it shows a really good trust in the management and the budget the city's doing to be able to open the books to the public and say, come here, take a look. So shout out to the mayor and shout out to the city department heads for being there and being in front of the public and being vulnerable about your budgets, because everybody can have a question about a 15-foot mower, but don't really have the ideas what it goes towards. It's a replacement, or, hey, why is this money going towards concrete this year? Well, we have to be able to do this with that. So I appreciate the utilities was there as well, which was good, and they brought some product demonstrations of what they're doing to fix some of our sewer pipes in the city, which is pretty cool too. So shout out to them for coming and being there on that Thursday. I would say Jane just needs to upgrade his toppings for his hot dogs, because I think he ran out of mustard.
We did run out of mustard, yes.
So, and ketchup is an abomination for a hot dog. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know.
Can you remind us what the timeline is then?
Sure.
For when the budget comes back for official vote?
Sure. So obviously we've presented you with some updated information tonight. We have a much clearer picture now with valuation numbers coming in. But the first vote on the budget, or potential vote on the budget, will be the first meeting in September, which I believe is the 14th. Don't hold me to that, but I think that's right. think 14th, 21st. And then we'll have a special meeting on the 21st if needed, and then the last meeting on the 28th as well as needed if we need to go to 3 rounds of voting.
Doesn't the budget still have to do 3 readings and a
3
separate
readings, yep, it's an ordinance,
public-
so, yeah,
public hearing?
yeah.
What's that, Jesse?
Unless you suspend the rules, of course, but yes, 3 readings for an ordinance.
I thought the budget still had to go through 3 readings.
Nope, you can suspend the rules.
Yeah. We suspended last year on the second reading.
And you will get us a time frame and these slides to us?
Yep, I'll update the timeline and send that to you, and then I'll send you this presentation.
And on next Monday's agenda, will there be more time for us to questions?
We don't
discuss?
have anything on for this, but we'll take any questions you have, and obviously, department heads are available if you need them.
I think maybe you ought to put a slot on there somewhere that we can have it on there for.
Do you have something specific in mind? Because I don't know that I'll have a lot more updated information for anything.
No, what I mean, you could put like budget discussion,
And then if there's questions, is that what you're looking for?
right,
Okay.
something like that on there.
Mark, I had a
Yes.
phone call just coming here tonight. When are we moving into the city hall?
That's a good question. Actually, we're starting to move tomorrow or Wednesday. It'll be a couple-week process. Our goal is to be moved in by the end of the month. You'll actually have on your agenda for next week's meeting the ordinances or resolutions, ordinances to officially move us back for the September meeting. So you'll be in council chambers in September for the budget conversation. Yes.
I think you're planning an open house and stuff like that.
We are, Tony and I and a group are going to meet tomorrow to kind of plan an open house, and we'll do a plaque unveiling and some of those kind of things. And we're already getting a lot of interest from community groups, Kiwanis and some others that want to come through and take tours. So we're starting to organize all that stuff. And I think Tony and some of our employee committees are working on a food truck Friday that's going to be at or near the City Hall parking lot so that employees can come and tour. So yeah, lots of moving pieces. It'll be a fun month kind of unveiling.
Lash, Lynn, you're more than welcome to come. We can send you an invite. Send them an invite. Any other questions? Comments?
I just have one about the airport fancy sign out there. Some people have been concerned about the city spending money on that. That was actually a gift from Heartland Bank. So for those of you who are watching on TV or in the crowd who say, boy, the city's sure throwing some money around, yeah, it looks like that, but it's not true. Heartland Bank, thanks to them.
Okay, any other comments, questions? If not, I'm going to declare the meeting closed at 8:21 p.m. Thank you, everyone.